In a world where gods clash and fates are forged, young Viking Torvald is chosen by a mysterious raven to wield the divine sword Tyrfing. Guided through perilous battles, cursed forests, and the depths of Helheim, he uncovers a pact binding his bloodline to Loki's schemes. As Ragnarok's fire looms, Torvald faces a choice: obey the gods or defy them to save his people. A saga of destiny, betrayal, and courage unfolds in this epic Viking tale. Chapter 1. The Raven That Never Dies. The wind howled like a dying wolf across the jagged cliffs of Vagfjord, carrying the bitter chill of an early frost. Torvald, barely 19 winters old, gripped his axe tighter, his calloused fingers numb against the worn oak handle. His boots crunched through the snow-dusted heather, each step heavier than the last. The sky above was a bruised grey, heavy with the promise of a storm, and the sea below roared against the rocks, as if the gods themselves were restless. He was alone, or so he thought, sent by his father Jarl Eirik to scout the northern ridges for signs of raiders from the rival clan of Hrafnsk. The feud between their people had simmered for generations, flaring into blood-soaked skirmishes whenever the longships met on open water. Torvald's task was simple: watch, report, and return before nightfall. But the weight in his chest told him this was no ordinary errand. His dreams had been plagued for weeks by visions of a black bird circling a stone mound, its eyes burning like embers, its voice whispering words he could not grasp. He shook his head, trying to banish the unease. "Foolish dreams," he muttered, his breath clouding in the frigid air. "Nothing but shadows." A sharp core sliced through the wind. Torvald froze. His eyes darted upward, scanning the barren cliffs. There, perched on a gnarled pine jutting from the rock face, sat a raven. Its feathers were black as midnight, glinting with an unnatural sheen, as if woven from the void itself. Its eyes locked onto his two glowing coals, unblinking, piercing through the haze of his thoughts. The bird tilted its head, let out another guttural caw, and spread its wings, launching into the air. Torvald's heart thudded. Ravens were Odin's eyes, or so the skalds sang, messengers of the Allfather, bearers of fate. But this one felt ... different. He watched it glide toward a narrow ravine, its shadow flickering over the snow like a dark omen. Against his better judgment, he followed. The ravine was a gash in the earth, its walls steep and slick with ice. Torvald descended carefully, his axe slung over his shoulder, his free hand gripping jutting rocks for balance. The raven circled above, its cries echoing off the stone, urging him deeper. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the ravine itself breathed with some ancient malice. At its heart, half buried in frost and moss, stood a mound of stones, older than any hall in Vagfjord. Runes were carved into the largest slab, their edges worn but sharp, glowing faintly under the dim light. Torvald's breath caught. He had heard tales of such places, tombs of forgotten gods, sealed away when the world was young. The skalds spoke of them in hushed tones, warning that to disturb such a place was to invite divine wrath. Yet the raven landed on the slab, its talons clicking against the stone, and it turned its burning gaze to him. "You," it said. Torvald stumbled back, his axe half drawn before he realized what he'd heard. The voice was not human, low, guttural, layered with the weight of centuries. It spoke in the old tongue, the language of runes. Yet he understood it as clearly as his own name. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Ravens don't speak." The bird tilted its head, as if amused. "I am no mere raven, boy. I am Unin's kin, bound to the one who lies beneath." Its beak opened, and the air shimmered, revealing runes that floated like wisps of smoke. They formed words, ancient and sharp. "Torvald, son of Eirik, blood of the lost line, opened the tomb." His knees buckled. The raven knew his name, his bloodline. Questions flooded his mind, but fear rooted him to the spot. Who lies beneath?" he managed. The raven's eyes flared brighter. "A god forgotten by men, but not by fate. His power stirs. Your destiny is bound to his. Open a tomb, or the world will drown in fire." Torvald's hand trembled as he touched the slab. The runes pulsed under his fingers, warm despite the biting cold. He didn't know why he trusted the creature, but something in its voice, its certainty, pulled at him like a tide. He shoved his weight against the stone, muscles straining, until it groaned and shifted, revealing a dark passage descending into the earth. The raven cawed approvingly and flapped its wings, vanishing into the shadows below. Torvald hesitated, his heart pounding against his ribs. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to run to the safety of his father's hall. But the dreams, the raven, the runes, they were no coincidence. He was meant to be here, drawing his axe. He stepped into the darkness. The passage was narrow, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. Torches, impossibly still burning, lined the walls, their flames blue and cold. The raven led the way, its wings brushing the stone, its eyes casting faint light. Runes covered every surface, telling a story Torvald could only half read. A god betrayed, a war lost, a promise unbroken. The deeper he went, the heavier the air became, pressing against his chest like a warning dot. At last, the passage opened into a vast chamber. In its center stood a sarcophagus of black stone, carved with serpents and wolves intertwined. The raven perched atop it, silent now, watching. Torvald approached, his footsteps echoing. The lid was etched with a single rune, larger than the others, its meaning clear even to him. "Death, who is this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The raven's voice filled the chamber, resonating in his bones. "He is Tyrfing the Bladebreaker, god of war and sacrifice, cast down by his kin, sealed here to sleep until the world's end draws near. You are his heir, Torvald, chosen by blood to wield his wrath." Torvald's mind reeled. Tyrfing was a name from half-remembered songs, a god of old wars, eclipsed by Odin and Thor. A myth, or so he'd thought. "Why me?" he demanded. "I'm no warrior, I'm barely a man." The raven cawed, a sound like laughter. "Destiny does not ask for readiness, it demands obedience. Open the sarcophagus, and claim what is yours." He hesitated, his hand hovering over the lid. The air thrummed with power, raising the hairs on his neck. He thought of his father, his village, the life he'd known. If he turned back now, he could return to it. But the raven's eyes held him, and the weight of the dreams pressed harder. He pushed. The lid slid open with a grinding roar, revealing a figure within. Not a corpse, but a mano, something like one clad in armor of blackened iron, his face hidden beneath a helm shaped like a snarling wolf. In his hands rested a sword, its blade etched with runes that pulsed like heartbeats. The air grew heavy, and Torvald's vision swam as a voice, deeper than the raven's, spoke from the figure. "Son of the lost line," it said, "you have come. The world trembles. Will you carry my blade, or will you fall?" Torvald staggered back, his axe clattering to the ground. The raven watched, silent, as the chamber seemed to close in around him. He wanted to run, to scream, but the voice held him fast. "What happens if I refuse?" he asked, his voice cracking. The figure's helm tilted, as if studying him. "Then the fire comes, and all you love will burn." The raven spread its wings, its cry echoing through the tomb. Torvald's hand reached for the sword, drawn by a force he could not name. His fingers closed around the hilt, and the world exploded into light. When he awoke, he was outside, sprawled on the snow beside the mound. The raven perched nearby, watching him. The sword lay across his lap, its runes glowing faintly. The storm had broken, and the sky was clear, stars burning, like eyes above. "You live," the raven said. "For now, the path begins here. Torvald, follow me, or perish." Torvald clutched the sword, its weight both foreign and familiar. He didn't understand what he'd unleashed, or why the gods had chosen him. But as he rose, the raven taking flight before him, he knew one thing. His life as a simple Viking was over. The wind carried the raven's cry, and Torvald followed, stepping into the unknown. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Ironwood. The forest loomed before Torvald, like a wall of shadow, its gnarled pines clawing at the twilight sky. The Ironwood, the Skalds called it, a place where light faltered, and the air tasted of old curses. Number 1 from Vargfield ventured here willingly, not since the tales of vanished hunters and voices that lured men to their doom. Yet the raven, its black wings cutting through the dusk, flew straight toward its heart, and Torvald followed. The weight of Tyrfing's sword heavy at his side, the blade, still pulsing faintly with runes, felt alive in its scabbard, as if it whispered to him in a tongue he could not yet understand. Since leaving the tomb, Torvald's mind had been a storm of questions. Who was Tyrfing truly? Why had the raven chosen him? And what fire did the god's voice warn of? The raven offered no answers, only sharp caws and fleeting glances from its ember-like eyes, urging him onward. He'd barely slept since the tomb, trudging through the night to reach the forest's edge. His father's hall, his village, his old life, they felt like dreams now, distant and fragile. The raven had promised a path, and though every step filled him with dread, turning back was no longer an option. Not with the sword in his hand, and the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. The iron wood swallowed him as he crossed its threshold. The air grew thick, damp with the scent of moss and decay. The trees stood unnaturally still, their branches twisted into shapes that seemed to writhe when glimpsed from the corner of his eye. The raven perched ahead, its talons gripping a low branch, its gaze fixed on him. "Keep moving, son of Eirik," it said, its voice a low rasp in the old tongue. "The wood tests the weak. Prove you are not." Torvald's grip tightened on his axe, the familiar weight grounding him. "What lies here?" he asked, his voice steady, despite the chill creeping up his spine. "What do you seek?" The raven tilted its head, as if weighing his worth. "Truth," it said. "Your blood hides secrets, bound by a pact older than these trees. Find the altar, and see." "An altar?" Torvald frowned, scanning the shadowed undergrowth. "What pact? Speak plainly, bird." The raven's laugh was a guttural call plainly. "The gods do not deal in plain truths. Walk, or die wondering." It took flight, weaving through the trees, and Torvald cursed under his breath. Following, the forest seemed to close in around him, the air growing heavier with each step. Whispers drifted on the wind, not words, but fragments of sound, like half-forgotten songs. His heart thudded, and the sword at his side hummed faintly, as if answering the unseen voices. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes' time felt slippery. In the iron wood, the raven led him deeper, past streams that ran black as ink, and stones etched with runes that made his eyes ache. At last, they reached a clearing, where a circle of ancient oaks surrounded a slab of granite, its surface stained with dark streaks that looked unsettlingly like blood. Runes spiraled across it, glowing faintly, and at its center stood a crude idol, a wooden figure, half man, half beast, with eyes of polished amber that seemed to follow him. The raven landed on the altar, its talons clicking. "Here," it said. The pact was sealed. "Touch the stone, and see." Torvald hesitated, his hand hovering over the granite. The air thrummed with power, and the sword at his side grew warm, its runes flaring. He glanced at the raven, its eyes unyielding, and pressed his palm to the stone. The world dissolved. Visions flooded his mind, flashes of fire and shadow, of a man cloaked in green, his smile sharp as a blade. Loki, the trickster god, stood before a warrior whose face mirrored Torvald's own, but older, weathered by war. They stood in this very clearing, the altar between them, as Loki's voice slithered through the air. "Your line will serve," the god said, his eyes glinting. "Blood for power, loyalty for survival. When the fire comes, your heir will wield the blade, or all will burn." The warrior knelt, his voice steady. "I swear it, on my blood." The vision shifted, showing a battlefield strewn with corpses, a sky split by lightning, and a raven circling above. The warrior's descendants fought, died, and rose again, their fates tied to a cycle Torvald could not grasp. The final image was of himself, standing in the tomb, the sword in his hand, the raven watching. Torvald staggered back, gasping, his hand burning where it had touched the stone. The raven watched, silent, as he steadied himself. "What was that?" he demanded. "What pact?" "Your ancestors swore an oath to Loki," the raven said. "In exchange for saving your people from annihilation, your bloodline was bound. To serve him, Tyrfing's sword is the key, and you are its bearer. The fire draws near, and the pact must be fulfilled." "Loki," Torvald's voice rose, anger flaring. "The trickster. Why would my kin trust him?" The raven's eyes narrowed. "Desperation makes allies of enemies. Your ancestor had no choice, nor do you." Before Torvald could reply, a low growl echoed through the clearing. The air grew colder, and the shadows between the trees thickened. Eyes gleamed in the darkness, yellow, unblinking, circling the altar. Spectral wolves, their forms translucent yet solid, stepped into the light, their teeth bared. They were not natural beasts, their fur rippling with faint runes, their growls carrying the weight of the underworld. The raven cawed sharply. The wood's guardians. They sensed the sword. "Fight," or fall. Torvald drew Tyrfing's sword, its blade humming as it left the scabbard. The runes glowed brighter, casting an eerie light across the clearing. The wolves lunged, their movements swift and silent, their claws tearing at the earth. Torvald swung, the sword lighter than it should have been, its edge slicing through. The first wolf, as if through mist, the creature dissolved into shadow, but more came, their numbers growing. He fought with the ferocity he hadn't known he possessed, the sword guiding his hand. Each strike felt instinctive, as if the blade itself knew the wolves' weaknesses. But they were relentless, their claws raking his arms, drawing blood that steamed in the cold air. The raven circled above, its cries urging him on, but it offered no aid. As the last wolf fell, Torvald stood panting, blood dripping from a gash on his forearm. The sword pulsed in his hand, its runes brighter than ever. The altar's glow had faded, but the idol's amber eyes still watched him, unblinking. "You survived," the raven said, landing on the altar. "The wood accepts you, for now, but the pact's weight grows heavier." Torvald sheathed the sword, his chest heaving. "What does Loki want from me? What is this fire?" The raven tilted its head. "The fire is Ragnarok's shadow, creeping closer. Loki seeks to shape its outcome, and you are his tool or his sacrifice. The altar has shown you the past. The future lies deeper in the wood." Torvald's jaw tightened. "And if I refuse, if I cast this sword away?" The raven's laugh was sharp, cutting. "Then the wolves were only a taste of what hunts you. The gods do not release their chosen so easily." The whispers returned, louder now, weaving through the trees. Torvald felt their pull, urging him deeper into the forest. The raven took flight, its wings a dark blur against the moonless sky. He wanted to turn back, to return to Vargfile, and warn his father, but the sword's hum anchored him to the path. The pact, the visions, the wolves, they were pieces of a puzzle he could not yet see. With a final glance at the altar, Torvald followed the raven, the iron wood closing around him like a trap. Chapter 3. Blood on the Frost. The frost crunched beneath Torvald's boots as he emerged from the iron wood. The weight of Tyrfing's sword pulling at his hip. The raven soared ahead, its black wings slicing through the dawn's pale light, guiding him back toward Vargfil. His body ached from the battle with the spectral wolves, his forearms still bleeding beneath a crude bandage of torn cloth. The visions from the altar haunted him, his ancestors' pact with Loki, the promise of fire, the raven's warning of Ragnarok's shadow. He needed answers, and his father, Jarl Eirik, would have them, or so he hoped. The journey back was a blur of exhaustion and unease. The sword hummed faintly, its runes pulsing in rhythm with his steps, as if alive. The raven offered no further words, only sharp caws when he slowed, urging him onward. By the time Vargfil's palisade came into view, the sun hung low, painting the snow-red smoke curled from the hall's chimney, a promise of warmth. But the air carried a bitter edge, something more than the usual scent of pine and sea. Torvald's gut tightened. The village was too quiet. No laughter, no clatter of work. Even the gulls, ever-present scavengers, were silent. He quickened his pace, the raven circling above, its eyes fixed on the horizon. As he crested the hill, he saw them, longships, 3 of them beached on the shore below. Their sails bore the skull and bone sigil of Hrafnskull, the rival clan. Shouts echoed, followed by the clash of steel. Torvald broke into a run, drawing Tyrfing's sword. Its blade gleamed, hungry, as he sprinted toward the village. The scene was chaos. Hrafnskull warriors, clad in furs and iron, swarmed the village square, their axes and swords meeting Vargfil's defenders in a storm of blood and iron. Torvald's people fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered, their shields splintering. Under the onslaught, he spotted his father, Jarl Eirik, at the center, his war axe swinging with the strength of a man half his age. Bellowing orders to hold the line, Torvald charged, the sword guiding his hand. A Hrafnskull warrior lunged at him, axe raised, but Tyrfing moved faster, slicing through the man's leather armor like cloth. Blood sprayed across the snow, and the warrior fell, eyes wide with shock. Torvald barely registered the kill, his body moving as if possessed, the sword's runes flaring with each strike. He fought his way to his father's side, cutting down 2 more raiders, their screams swallowed by the din of battle. Torvald, Eirik roared, his face streaked with blood and soot. "Where in Odin's name have you been?" "No time," Torvald shouted, parrying a spear thrust. They came from the sea, Eirik grunted, cleaving a warrior's shoulder with his axe. They knew our patrols. Someone betrayed us. The words hit Torvald like a blow. A traitor. Before he could ask, the raven's cry split the air, sharp and urgent. He glanced up, seeing it dive toward a cluster of Hrafnskell warriors breaking through the western flank. Among them stood a figure in a hooded cloak, moving with purpose, not fighting but watching. The raven swooped low, talons raking at the figure's hood, revealing a face. Torvald knew Sigrid, the village seeress, her silver hair glinting in the fading light. Sigrid, Torvald whispered, disbelief rooting him. She was his father's trusted advisor, a woman who read the runes and spoke of the god's will. Why was she with the enemy? The raven cawed again, landing on a nearby roof. The snake hides in the grass, it rasped, its voice cutting through the battle's roar. She serves another. Torvald's mind raced, the altar's vision flashing. Before him Loki's sly smile, the pact sealed in blood. Was Sigrid part of it? He pushed forward, dodging a swinging axe. His eyes locked on her. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable, then slipped behind a burning hut, vanishing into the smoke. The battle turned as Vagfjell's warriors rallied, driving the Hrafnskell raiders back toward their ships. Torvald fought alongside his father, Tyrfing's blade a blur, its power unnerving even him. By the time the last raider fled, the snow was stained crimson, and the village smoldered, half its homes reduced to ash. The survivors gathered in the square, tending wounds and counting the dead. Eirik stood among them, his face grim, his axe still dripping. Torvald sheathed the sword, its hum fading but not gone. He approached his father. The raven perched silently on a nearby post. "Father," he said, his voice low. "Sigrid was with them. I saw her." Eirik's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "Impossible. She's been with us since I was a boy." "You're mistaken." "I'm not," Torvald insisted, glancing at the raven. The bird saw it too. "She's betrayed us." Eirik's gaze flicked to the raven, his expression darkening. "That cursed thing, where did you find it? And that sword?" He gestured to Tyrfing, its runes still faintly glowing. "You vanish for days, return with a blade no smith could forge, and now you speak of treason. Explain yourself, boy." Torvald hesitated, the weight of the tomb, the visions, and the pact pressing on him. He couldn't tell the full truth, not yet. "I found a tomb in the northern ridges," he said carefully. "The raven led me there. The sword belonged to an old god, Tyrfing. It's tied to our bloodline." Eirik's face paled, a rare crack in his iron resolve. "Tyrfing," he whispered, "the blade breaker, that's a name from dead songs. Torvald, if it's true, you've brought a curse upon us." The raven cawed, sharp and mocking. "Curse or salvation, Jarl," it said, its voice carrying over the murmurs of the gathered warriors. "The fire comes, and your son holds its key." Eirik, hand tightened on his axe, his eyes darting between Torvald and the raven. The warriors around them stirred, some making the sign of Odin, others muttering about witchcraft. "You trust this creature?" Eirik asked, his voice low and dangerous. "It speaks, and you follow like a thrall." "I don't trust it," Torvald admitted, his hand resting on Tyrfing's hilt. "But it's shown me things, visions of our ancestors, a pact with Loki, and now Sigrid's betrayal. Something larger is at play." "Father," Eirik's gaze hardened, but before he could respond, a shout rose from the shore. One of the Hrafnskell longships left, abandoned in their retreat, had begun to burn, its flames unnaturally green, licking the sky like serpents. The raven's eyes flared, and it took flight, circling the blaze. "Loki's mark," it rasped, its voice audible only to Torvald. "The traitor's work. Find her, or the fire spreads." Torvald's heart pounded. He turned to his father. "We need to find Sigrid now." Eirik nodded grimly, barking orders to gather a search party. But as the warriors moved, Torvald felt the sword's hum grow stronger, its runes pulsing in time with his pulse. The raven landed on his shoulder, its talons digging into his cloak. "She hides in the cliffs," it whispered. "Follow, and see the truth." Torvald slipped away from the group, moving toward the cliffs overlooking the sea. The raven guided him to a narrow cave, its entrance hidden by frost-covered boulders. Inside, the air was damp and cold, the walls etched with runes that glowed faintly, like those in the tomb. Sigrid stood at the far end, her back to him, chanting softly before a crude altar of bones and seaweed. A green flame flickered at its center, casting her shadow in writhing shapes. "Secret," Torvald called, his hand on Tyrfing's hilt. "Why?" She turned, her amber eyes calm but sharp, like a predator's. "You've seen the visions, haven't you?" she said, her voice soft but laced with power. "The pact, the fire. You think you're chosen, Torvald, but you're a pawn. Loki's will moves through me, not you." The raven cawed, its wings flaring. "Liar," it hissed. "She twists the pact for her own ends." Sigrid smiled, raising a hand. The green flame flared, and the air grew heavy, pressing Torvald back. "The sword is a tool," she said. "Give it to me, and Vagfjell might yet be spared." Torvald drew Tyrfing, its blade singing as it met the air. "No," he said, stepping forward. "You betrayed us. You brought the raiders." Sigrid's smile faded, and the flame surged, forcing Torvald to shield his eyes. When he looked again, she was gone, the altar's fire extinguished, leaving only the scent of ash and treachery. The raven's cry echoed through the cave, urging him back to the village. He emerged into the night, the sword heavy in his hand, the raven circling above. Sigrid's betrayal was only the beginning, a thread in a larger web. The fire was coming, and he was running out of time to understand why. Chapter 4. The Spear of the Allfather. The wind screamed through the peaks of the Skyclaw Mountains, tearing at Torvald's cloak as he climbed. The raven soared above, its black wings stark against the snow-laden clouds, leading him higher into the jagged heights. Tyrfing's sword hung heavy at his side, its runes pulsing faintly, as if sensing the path ahead. 3 days had passed since Sigrid's betrayal in Vagfjell, her green-flamed altar and cryptic words burning in mind. The raven had urged him to leave the village at once, speaking of a weapon forged by Odin himself, spear hidden in a mountain shrine, its power tied to the god's will and Torvald's destiny. He had left without telling his father Jarl Eirik, knowing the old man would forbid it. The village was still reeling from the Frafenskul raid, its people mourning the dead and rebuilding amidst whispers of treachery. Sigrid's disappearance had only deepened the unease, and Torvald's sudden departure would raise questions he couldn't answer. Not yet. The raven's words were clear. The spear was the next step, a tool to face the fire Sigrid had warned of, the fire tied to Loki's pact and Ragnarok's shadow. The climb was brutal. Ice clung to the rocks, and the air was thin, biting at his lungs. Torvald's hands, raw from the cold, gripped the jagged stone as he hauled himself up a narrow ledge. The raven perched ahead, its ember eyes unblinking, its voice cutting through the wind's howl. "Higher, son of Eirik," it rasped. "The Allfather's gaze is upon you." Torvald gritted his teeth, his muscles burning. "What is this spear?" he demanded, pausing to catch his breath. "Why do I need it?" The raven tilted its head, its feathers ruffling. "Gungnir, the spear of the Ulfder, forged in the fires of Asgard. It never misses its mark. It waits in the shrine, guarded by one who does not forgive. Claim it, or the fire will claim you." Torvald's heart thudded. Gungnir was a legend, sung by skalds, as Odin's own weapon, a symbol of divine authority. If it was real, its power could shift the balance of any battle. But the raven's mention of a guardian sent a chill down his spine. "What guards it?" he asked, his voice low. The raven's laugh was a sharp caw, a spirit of wrath, bound to the shrine by Odin's will. "Prove your worth, or join the bones at its feet." Torvald swallowed, his hand brushing Tyrfing's hilt. The sword had saved him in the iron wood, but its power felt unpredictable, as if it had a will of its own. He pressed on, following the raven up a winding path that led to a cleft in the mountain's face. The air grew heavier, charged with an unseen presence, and the runes on Tyrfing's blade flared brighter, casting faint light on the frost-covered stone. The cleft opened into a cavern, its walls glittering with veins of quartz that caught the dim glow of torches that should not have burned. At the cavern's heart stood a shrine, a stone platform carved with ravens and wolves, their eyes inlaid with polished obsidian. Atop it rested a spear, its shaft black as night, its head gleaming with a silver that seemed to pulse with life. Runes spiraled along its length, glowing faintly, and the air around it thrummed with power. Torvald stepped forward, his breath catching. "Gungnir," he whispered. The raven landed on the shrine, its talons clicking. "Take it," it said. "But beware. The guardian wakes." Before Torvald could move, the cavern shook. A low growl echoed, growing into a roar that rattled his bones. The torches flared, their flames turning blue, and a shape emerged from the shadows, a towering figure, neither man nor beast, its form shifting like smoke. Its eyes burned red, and its body was clad in armor of jagged ice, cracked and ancient. In its hand was a club of blackened bone, etched with runes that pulsed with malice. Who dares seek the Allfather's spear? The spirit bellowed, its voice a storm of rage. You mortal, stink of Loki's taint. Torvald drew Tyrfing, its blade singing as it met the air. I am Torvald, son of Eirik, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I seek Gungnir to face the fire that comes. The spirit laughed, a sound like cracking ice. The fire, you know nothing of it, boy. The trickster's pact binds you, but Odin's will test you. Prove your worth, or die. It lunged, its club swinging with force that shook the cavern. Torvald dove aside, the blow shattering the stone where he'd stood. He rolled to his feet, Tyrfing slashing upward, its runes blazing. The blade met the spirit's arm, cutting through ice and shadow, but the creature barely flinched, its red eyes narrowing. You wield Tyrfing's wrath, it growled, but it is not enough. The fight was relentless. The spirit moved with unnatural speed, its club a blur, each strike sending tremors through the cavern. Torvald fought back, Tyrfing guiding his hand, its power surging through him. He struck again and again, chipping away at the spirit's form, but it seemed endless, reforming with each blow. His strength waned, his wounds from the iron were reopening, blood dripping onto the stone. The raven circled above, its cries sharp. The spear, it rasped, claim it, or fall. Torvald glanced at Gungnir, its glow calling to him. He ducked under another swing, sprinting toward the shrine. The spirit roared, its form swelling, blocking his path. Desperate, Torvald thrust Tyrfing into the ground, channeling its power. The runes flared, and a shockwave of light erupted. Staggering the spirit, he seized the moment, leaping onto the shrine and grasping Gungnir's shaft. The spear burned under his touch, its runes searing his palm, but he held fast. The ravens, not the spirits, echoed in his mind, deep and commanding. Wield me, son of the lost line, and know my weight. The spirit howled. Charging, Torvald spun, Gungnir in hand, and threw. The spear flew true, its head piercing the spirit's chest. A blinding light erupted, and the creature shattered, its fragments dissolving into the air. The cavern fell silent, the torches dimming, and Gungnir returned to Torvald's hand, its weight lighter than he expected. He stood panting, the spear and sword humming in unison. The raven landed on the shrine, its eyes gleaming. You are worthy, it said. For now, the spear is yours, but its purpose is not yet clear. Torvald's chest heaved, his mind reeling. What now? He asked, his voice hoarse. Sigrid, the pact, the fire, what does it all mean? The raven tilted its head. The fire is Loki's gambit, and Sigrid his pawn. The spear will guide you, but the path grows darker. Return to Vagfjall. The traitor's shadow lingers. Torvald nodded, exhaustion settling into his bones. He slung Gungnir across his back, its power a quiet hum beside Tyrfing's restless pulse. The raven took flight, leading him out of the cavern and back into the storm. As he descended the mountain, the weight of two divine weapons pressed on him, and the raven's words echoed. The fire was coming, and he was its Kaior, its kindling. Chapter 5. Tides of the Serpent's Breath. The sea roared like a living beast, its waves clawing at the long ship's hull as Torvald clung to the oar. The raven perched at the prow, its black feathers slick with spray, its ember eyes fixed on the horizon. The Skyclaw Mountains were a fading shadow behind them, and Vagfjall a memory buried in grief and smoke. Torvald had returned to his village only long enough to gather a small crucix trusted warriors, men loyal to his father, Jarl Irikand, a ship, the Stormfang. The raven had been insistent. The next step in his path lay across the sea, in the distant isles where the god's wrath stirred the waters. Sigrid's betrayal still burned in his mind, her words about Loki's will and the fire haunting him. Tyrfing's sword hung at his side, its runes pulsing faintly, while Gungnir, the spear of Odin, was lashed to the ship's mast, its shaft humming with a quiet power. The raven had spoken of a trial by sea, a test to prove Torvald's worth, to wield such weapons, but the details were vague, as always, wrapped in the bird's cryptic riddles. Steer north, the raven rasped, its voice cutting through the wind's howl. The Isles of Mistskull await. There, the god's anger. Bruised Torvald gritted his teeth, his hands raw from the oar. What awaits us? He shouted, salt stinging his eyes. Speak plainly, bird, or I'll pluck your feathers. The raven's laugh was a sharp caw. Plainly, the sea does not suffer fools, son of Eirik Jarmangander's kinsters, sent by a god who hates your path. Survive, and the isles will reveal their secrets. Torvald's crew exchanged uneasy glances. Jarmangander, the world serpent, was a name to chill even the hardiest Viking's blood. To speak of its kin was to invite doom. Bjorn, a grizzled warrior with a scar across his cheek, leaned close. This bird leads us to death, he muttered. Why trust it? Because I have no choice, Torvald replied, his voice low. The gods have marked me. We sail, or we burn. Bjorn spat into the sea but said no more, pulling his oar with grim resolve. The Stormfang cut through the waves, its dragon-headed prow defiant against the growing storm. The sky darkened, clouds swirling like a maelstrom, and the wind carried a strange scent, brine mixed with something acrid, like venom. Hours bled into days, the sea relentless. The crew battled exhaustion, their faces gaunt, their hands blistered. Torvald stood at the helm, Gungnir's hum steadying him, though his dreams were plagued by visions, Sigrid's green flames, Loki's sly smile, and a serpent's coils rising from the deep. The raven never left the prow, its eyes scanning the horizon, unyielding even as the storm worsened. On the third night, the sea turned against them. The waves rose like mountains, their crests glowing with an unnatural green light. The air grew thick, heavy with a presence that made the crew's prayers to Thor falter. Torvald gripped Gungnir, its runes flaring, and the raven's cry split the night. It comes. The bird shrieked, the serpent's breath. A shadow moved beneath the waves, vast and sinuous, its scales glinting like polished iron. The Stormfang lurched as the sea churned, and a head broke the surface of serpents, larger than the ship itself, its eyes twin moons of venomous green. Fangs dripped with a poison that hissed as it met the water, and its coils thrashed, sending waves crashing over the deck. Jarmangander's spawn. Bjorn roared, drawing his axe. The crew scrambled for weapons, their shouts drowned by the serpent's hiss. Torvald untied Gungnir, its weight steady in his hands. Hold the ship, he bellowed. I'll face it. The raven landed on his shoulder, its talons digging deep. This is Aegir's wrath, it rasped. The sea god despises Loki's gambit. Strike true, or we all drown. The serpent lunged, its jaws wide enough to swallow the mast. Torvald threw Gungnir, the spear, flying with a force that shook the air. Its head pierced the serpent's throat, and the beast reared back, shrieking, its blood black and steaming. But it did not fall. Its coils wrapped the Stormfang wood, groaning under the strain, and the crew hacked at its scales, their blades barely scratching the beast. Torvald drew Tyrfing, its runes blazing. He leaped onto the serpent's coil, the deck splintering beneath him, and drove the sword into its flesh. The blade sang, cutting deeper than any mortal weapon could, and the serpent thrashed, nearly throwing him into the sea. Gungnir returned to his hand, summoned by its own power, and he struck again, spear and sword working in tandem, each blow guided by a force he could not name. The battle was chaos. Waves battered the ship, men screamed, and the serpent's venom burned holes in the deck. Torvald fought like a man possessed, his blood singing with the power of the weapons. The raven circled, its cries urging him on, and slowly, impossibly, the serpent weakened, its movements sluggish, its eyes dimming. With a final thrust, Torvald drove Gungnir through the serpent's eye. The beast convulsed, its coils loosening, and sank into the depths, leaving a trail of black blood. The sea calmed, the green glow fading, but the Stormfang was battered, its hull leaking, its crew bloodied and shaken. Torvald collapsed against the mast, Gungnir and Tyrfing heavy in his hands. The raven landed beside him, its eyes gleaming. You live, it said. Aegir's wrath is sated. For now, the isles are near. Bjorn approached, his face pale. What are you, Torvald? He asked, eyeing the weapons. No man fights like that. Torvald shook his head, too exhausted to answer. I'm what the gods made me, he said finally. We sail on. Dawn broke as the Isles of Mistskull appeared, their cliffs shrouded in fog. The raven guided the Stormfang to a rocky shore, where a stone archway stood, carved with runes. that matched those on Tyrfing and Gungnir. Torvald disembarked, the crew staying behind to repair the ship. The Raven led him through the archway, into a cave where the air thrummed with power. At its center stood a stone tablet, its surface etched, with a map of stars and seas, and a single rune, Fate. The Raven perched on it, its voice low. "Here lies the next thread of Loki's pact," it said. "The gods war, and you are their blade. Read the stars, and choose your path." Torvald traced the runes, his mind heavy with the serpent's blood and the Raven's words. The map pointed north, to a place the Skalds called the Bone Isles, where the dead were said to whisper. He felt the weight of Gungnir and Tyrfing, their power a chain binding him to a destiny he could not escape. As he emerged from the cave, the Raven took flight, circling the fog-shrouded cliffs. "The fire draws closer," it said. "Secret knows you live, she will not rest." Torvald gripped his weapons, the sea's chill sinking into his bones. The god's wrath was far from over, and he was their pawn or their weapon. Chapter 6. Runes carved in bone-to-bone isles loomed through the mist like the spines of some ancient beast, their jagged cliffs glistening with frost under a moonless sky. The Stormfang rocked gently on the black waves, its hull patched but scarred from the serpent's wrath. Torvald stood at the prow, Gungnir strapped across his back, Tyrfing's sword heavy at his hip. The Raven perched on the dragon-headed bow, its ember eyes scanning the shore, where the stone archway from the Mist-Skull Isles had pointed them. The air was thick with salt and something older, a scent like dust and forgotten graves. The crew was silent, their faces etched with unease. The battle with the serpent had shaken them, and the whispers of the Bone Isles where the dead were said to speak did little to ease their fears. Bjorn, the grizzled warrior, had muttered prayers to Thor since they'd sighted the isles, his scarred hands never far from his axe. Torvald felt their eyes on him, questioning, but he had no answers to give. The Raven's cryptic words drove him forward, a relic of bone, runes that held truths, and a war that loomed in the shadows of fate. "Land there," the Raven rasped, its voice sharp against the lapping waves. "The relic waits in the hollow of the dead. Find it, and learn." Torvald nodded, signaling the crew to steer toward a narrow cove. "What is this relic?" he asked, his voice low so the others wouldn't hear. "And what truth does it hold?" The Raven tilted its head, its feathers glinting. "A bone of the first, carved with runes of prophecy. It speaks of the war to come, gods against men, men against gods. You must read it, son of Eirik, or the fire will blind you." Torvald's jaw tightened. The fire again, always the fire. Sigurd's betrayal, Loki's pact, the serpent's attack, all threads in a tapestry he could barely glimpse. He gripped Tyrfing's hilt, its faint hum steadying him, and stepped onto the rocky shore as the Stormfang anchored. The crew stayed behind, their faces pale, muttering about curses. Only Bjorn followed, his axe in hand, loyalty outweighing fear. The Raven led them inland, its wings a dark blur against the mist. The isles were a maze of stone and bone, littered with skulls and ribs half buried in the earth, some human, some not. Runes glowed faintly on the larger bones, their light pulsing like a heartbeat. The air was heavy, charged with a presence that made Torvald's skin prickle. Gungnir's hum grew stronger, as if sensing the place's power. They reached a hollow in the cliffs, a cavern mouth yawning like a wound. Inside, the walls were lined with bones, stacked into arches and spirals, each etched with runes that shimmered. In the dark, at the center stood a pedestal of black stone, and atop it rested a single bone, a thigh bone, larger than any man's people, its surface covered in runes that burned with a pale, sickly light. The Raven landed beside it, its eyes fixed on Torvald. "Touch it," it said, "read the runes, and see." Torvald hesitated, his hand hovering over the bone. Tyrfing's runes flared at his side, and Gungnir's weight seemed to pull him forward. Bjorn stood at the cavern's entrance, his axe raised, his eyes darting to the shadows. "This place is cursed," he muttered. "Be quick, Torvald." Torvald pressed his fingers to the bone. The runes flared, and the world dissolved into light. Visions flooded his mind, sharp and relentless. A battlefield stretched across a shattered plain, the sky split by fire and lightning. Gods clashed, Odin with his spear, Thor with his hammer, Loki with a blade of green flame. Men fought beside them, their screams mingling with the roars of beasts, wolves, serpents, giants. A raven circled above, its cries echoing a single word: fire. Torvald saw himself, older, scarred, wielding Tyrfing and Gungnir, standing before a burning tree. Yggdrasil, the world tree, its branches crumbling to ash. Sigurd's voice whispered through the chaos. The pact breaks, and the fire rises. The vision shifted, showing a hall of ice and shadow, where a figure cloaked in green knelt before a throne of bones. Loki, his eyes gleaming, spoke words Torvald couldn't hear, but the bones' runes burned brighter, revealing a truth. The war was not coming, it was already here, woven into the pact. His ancestor had sworn. Torvald's bloodline was the fulcrum, and he was its blade. He staggered back, gasping. His hand burned where it had touched the bone. The runes still glowed, their light fading slowly. Bjorn rushed to his side, steadying him. "What did you see?" he demanded, his voice tight. "War," Torvald said, his voice hoarse. "Gods and men, tearing the world apart. The fire, its Ragnarök, or its beginning. The raven cawed, its wings flaring. The bone speaks true. The pact binds you to Loki, but the war is larger. The gods choose their champions, and you are marked." Bjorn's face darkened. "Loki, you serve the trickster." "No," Torvald snapped, his hand on Tyrfing's hilt. "I serve no one, but the gods have tangled me in their game, and I need to know why." Before the raven could reply, a low rumble shook the cavern. The bones on the walls rattled, and a voice, not the raven's, not human, echoed from the shadows. "You read the runes, mortal," it hissed, "but you trespass in the dead's domain." The air thickened, and shapes emerged from the walls, skeletal figures, their bones etched with glowing runes, their eyes hollow pits of light. They moved with unnatural grace, wielding weapons of bone and stone, their forms shimmering like mist. Bjorn raised his axe, cursing, but Torvald felt the weight of Gungnir and Tyrfing, their powers surging. "Guardians of the relic," the raven said, taking flight. "They protect the bones. Truth, fight, or join them." Torvald drew its blade singing, and unslung Gungnir. The first skeleton lunged, its bone spear thrusting toward his chest. He parried with Tyrfing, the blade shattering the spear, and threw Gungnir, its head piercing the skeleton's skull. The figure crumbled, but more came, their numbers swelling. Bjorn fought beside him, his axe cleaving through bone, but the guardians were relentless, reforming from the scattered remains. Torvald moved as if guided, Tyrfing and Gungnir working in unison. Each strike felt instinctive, the weapon's power flowing through him. He drove Gungnir through a guardian's chest, its runes flaring, and Tyrfing cleaved another in half. The cavern echoed with the clash of bone and steel. The raven's cries, urging him on. As the last guardian fell, Torvald stood panting, blood dripping from a gash on his cheek. The bone on the pedestal glowed faintly, its runes dimming. The raven landed beside it, its eyes unyielding. "You've read the truth," it said. "The war comes, and you are its herald. Take the bone, and carry its warning." Torvald hesitated, then grasped the bone, its weight light but heavy with meaning. The runes pulsed once, then faded, as if sealing their secrets within him. Bjorn watched, his face grim. "This is madness, Torvald," he said. "God's wars, relics, what are we to do with this?" "Go back to the ship," Torvald said, tucking the bone into his cloak. "Tell the others to prepare. The raven leads us north again." Bjorn nodded, but his eyes lingered on the bone, fear and doubt warring within them. As they left the cavern, the raven took flight, its cry echoing over the isles. Torvald felt the weight of the visions. The bone's runes burned into his mind. The war was coming, and he was no longer just a Viking, he was a piece on the gods' board. Caught between Loki's schemes and Odin's will, the Stormfang waited in the cove, its crew restless. Torvald boarded, the bone hidden, the ravens circling. Above, the sea stretched north, toward an unknown fate, and the fire loomed ever closer. Chapter 7. The shadow of Yggdrasil. The Stormfang cut through the northern seas, its sails taut against a biting wind. Torvald stood at the helm, the bone relic tucked inside his cloak, its runes a silent weight against his chest. Tyrfing's sword hummed at his hip, and Gungnir, lashed to the mast, pulsed faintly, as if sensing the path ahead. The Bone Isles were a fading memory. Their skeletal guardians and prophetic visions burned into Torvald's mind. The raven, perched on the prow, had spoken little since they'd left, its ember eyes fixed on the horizon where storm clouds gathered, heavy with the promise of divine wrath. The crew was restless. their faces gaunt from days at sea and the shadow of the serpent's attack. Bjorn, ever loyal, kept them in line, but Torvald felt their doubt, the bones visions of gods clashing, Yggdrasil burning, and a war that would consume the world had shaken him, and he knew his men sensed his unease. The raven had promised answers in a hidden grove, a place where the roots of the world tree touched the mortal realm, but the bird's riddles grew darker, and Torvald's trust in it wavered. Land ahead, Bjorn called, pointing to a jagged coastline cloaked in mist. The raven cawed, its wings flaring, and took flight, leading them toward a narrow fjord, flanked by cliffs that seemed to pulse with an ancient rhythm. The air grew heavy, charged with a presence that made the crew's prayers falter. Torvald signaled to drop anchor, his hand brushing the bone relic. "I go alone," he said, meeting Bjorn's gaze. "Keep the ship ready." Bjorn's scarred face tightened. "You chase ghosts, Torvald. This path feels like death." "It's not my path," Torvald replied, his voice low. "It's the gods. Stay here." The raven led him ashore, its cries echoing off the cliffs. The fjord narrowed into a path, lined with twisted trees, their branches woven into arches that seemed to breathe. The ground was soft, carpeted with moss that glowed faintly, and the air carried a hum, like a distant chant. Tyrfing's runes flared, and Gungnir's weight seemed to pull him forward, as if drawn by the same force guiding the raven. The path opened into a grove, its center dominated by a massive tree, its roots sprawling like serpents, its bark etched with runes that shimmered like starlight. Yggdrasil, a fragment of its essence, stood before him, its branches stretching into the mist, vanishing into realms unseen. At its base was a pool of black water, its surface still as glass, reflecting Torvald's face and the raven perched on a root. "Here," the raven rasped, its voice heavy with meaning. "The world tree sees all past, present fate. Face its shadow, and prove your worth." Torvald's grip tightened on Gungnir. "What shadow?" he asked, his voice steady despite the unease coiling in his gut. "What must I do?" The raven's eyes gleamed. "Yggdrasil holds the truth of all things. To wield its power, you must face yourself, the dark within. Fail, and you are lost." The pool rippled, and the air grew cold. Torvald stepped closer, peering into the water. His reflection stared back, but it was wrong. His eyes were black as pitch, his face twisted into a sneer. Tyrfing and Gungnir in his hands, their runes glowing with malice. The reflection moved, stepping out of the pool, a shadow given form, its presence heavy with rage and hunger. "Hugh," the shadow said, its voice a warped echo of Torvald's own, weak, doubting, a pawn of gods and birds. "You think you can wield their power?" Torvald raised Gungnir, his heart pounding. "What are you?" he demanded. The shadow laughed, a sound like breaking bone. "I am you, what you could be." "What? You fear the gods' tools are heavy, Torvald. Give them to me, and be free." The raven cawed, circling above. "Fight it," it said, "or lose all you are." The shadow lunged, Tyrfing's blade slashing toward Torvald's chest. He parried with Gungnir, the spear's runes flaring, and countered with Tyrfing, the two blades clashing in a shower of sparks. The shadow was fast, its movements mirroring his own, but darker, crueler. Each strike was a test, not just of strength, but of will, as if the shadow knew his doubts, his fears of Loki's pact, of Sigrid's betrayal, of the fire that haunted his visions. "You're nothing," the shadow hissed, its blade grazing Torvald's arm, drawing blood. A boy playing at hero, bound to a trickster's lies. Torvald gritted his teeth, pain sharpening his focus. He thrust Gungnir, its head piercing the shadow's shoulder, but the wound closed, the shadow laughing. "You can't kill what you are," it said. "Embrace me, or die." The grove pulsed, Yggdrasil's roots trembling. Torvald's mind raced, the bone relic's visions flashing, gods at war. Yggdrasil burning, his own face scarred and resolute. The shadow was his fear, his doubt, but it was also a lie. He was more than a pawn, more than his bloodline's curse. He dropped Gungnir, letting it fall, and gripped Tyrfing with both hands. The shadow smirked, raising its own blade, but Torvald didn't strike. He stepped forward, meeting the shadow's gaze, and spoke, his voice steady. "You're not me. You're what the gods want me to fear. I choose my path." The shadow faltered, its form flickering. Torvald drove Tyrfing into the ground, its runes blazing, and the grove erupted in light. The shadow screamed, dissolving into the pool, its black water rippling and stilling. Yggdrasil's hum softened, and the raven landed beside him, its eyes approving. "You faced the truth," it said. "The world tree knows you now. Its roots guide you next to the forge where the gods' weapons were born." Torvald retrieved Gungnir, its weight familiar again. Blood dripped from his arm, but he felt lighter, as if a chain had broken. "What forge?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The raven tilted its head. "The forgotten forge, where Tyrfing and Gungnir were shaped. There you'll learn the fire's source. But beware, Sigrid seeks it too." Torvald's jaw tightened. Sigrid, her betrayal lingered, a wound deeper than the shadow's blade. He touched the bone relic, its runes silent but heavy with prophecy. The war was closer, and he was its fulcrum, caught between Loki's schemes and Odin's will. As he left the grove, Yggdrasil's branches seemed to whisper, their runes fading into the mist. The raven took flight, leading him back to the Stormfang. The crew waited, their eyes wide as they saw the blood on his cloak, the resolve in his face. Bjorn said nothing, only nodded, as if sensing the change in him. The sea stretched west, toward the forge, and Torvald felt the weight of his weapons, the bone, and the visions. The shadow was gone, but its words lingered. "You think you can wield their power?" He would, or the fire would claim them all. Chapter 8. Fires of the Forgotten Forge. The Stormfang groaned under the weight of a merciless sea, its patched hull battered by waves that carried the acrid temps of sulfur. Torvald stood at the prow, his cloak singed from the heat radiating off the volcanic isle ahead. The Forgotten Forge. The raven had called it a place where God's weapons were born, hidden in a wasteland of ash and molten rock. Tyrfing's sword pulsed at his hip, Gungnir's spear hummed across his back, and the bone relic, tucked inside his cloak, seemed to burn against his chest. The visions of Yggdrasil's shadow still lingered, their challenge to his resolve sharpening his focus. But the raven's latest cryptic command weighed heavier: reforge a shattered artifact to face the fire that loomed. The crew was weary, their faces etched with fear since the Bone Isles. Bjorn, ever steadfast, had taken to sharpening his axe obsessively, his eyes darting to the raven perched on the mast. The bird's ember eyes glowed against the ashen sky, its wings folded as it stared. At the smoldering isle, the volcano's peak belched smoke, and rivers of lava glowed like veins of fire, casting an eerie light over the black sand shore. "Land there," the raven rasped, its voice cutting through the crew's murmurs. "The forge waits, guarded by its maker. The artifact must be whole again." Torvald gripped the bone relic, its runes silent but heavy with prophecy. "What artifact?" he asked, his voice low. "And who guards it?" The raven tilted its head, its laugh a guttural core. "A shard of the gods' will, broken in their wars. The smith Voland forged it, and he alone can mend it. But he trusts no mortal, and his fire burns the unworthy." Torvald's jaw tightened. Voland, the legendary smith, was a name from Skald's tales, a man cursed by the gods, bound to his forge for eternity. If the raven spoke true, this trial would be unlike any before. He signaled the crew to beach the Stormfang on the black shore, the heat searing his lungs as he stepped onto the scalding sand. "Stay with the ship," he told Bjorn. "This is my path." Bjorn's scarred face darkened. "You'll burn, Torvald. This place reeks of death." "Then I'll face it," Torvald replied, his hand brushing Tyrfing's hilt. The raven took flight, leading him inland, and the crew's uneasy gazers followed him into the haze. The wasteland was a hell of ash and fire. Cracked earth steamed beneath his boots, and the air shimmered with heat. Rivers of lava snaked through the landscape, their glow reflecting off Tyrfing's blade. The raven guided him to a massive cavern at the volcano's base, its entrance framed by blackened stone carved with runes that pulsed like embers. Inside, the heat was suffocating, the air thick with the clang of metal and the roar of flames. At the cavern's heart stood a forge, its fire white-hot, fed by a molten stream that flowed from the volcano's core. Anvils of black iron lined the walls, and weapon swords, spears, axes hung like trophies, their edges glinting with unnatural light. At the forge stood a figure, tall and gaunt, his skin blackened by soot, his eyes burning like the fire. He tended. Voland the smith hammered a blade, each strike sending sparks that hissed in the air. "You come late, son of Eirik," Voland said without looking up, his voice like grinding stone. The raven's tongue is never still. Torvald stopped, Gungnir heavy in his hand. You know me? He asked. Wary Volin's hammer paused and he turned, his eyes narrowing. I know the stink of Loki's pact on you. Show me the artifact. Torvald hesitated, then drew the bone relic from his cloak. Its runes flared, revealing a crack along its length, as if it had been split and mended. Volin's gaze sharpened, and he beckoned Torvald closer. The bone of prophecy, he said, taking it with calloused hands. Shattered when the gods warred, it holds their secrets, but it's incomplete. Give me the shard. Shard. Torvald frowned, glancing at the raven perched on an anvil. What shard? The raven cawed, its wings flaring. You carry it, fool. The piece Sigrid stole. Torvald's blood ran cold. Sigrid. Her betrayal in Vargfile, her green-flamed altar, her words about Loki's will, they echoed now. She has it? He asked, his voice tight. Volin's laugh was a dry rasp. She seeks the forge too. Guided by the trickster, the shard is hers, but not for long. He pointed to a molten pool beside the forge, its surface rippling with heat. Enter the fire. Find her. Bring the shard, or the bone stays broken. Torvald stared at the pool, its heat searing his face. That's death, he said, gripping Tyrfing. Death or destiny, Volin replied, returning to his hammer. The forge tests all. The raven's eyes gleamed. Go, it said, or the fire claims all. Torvald's heart pounded, but the bone's visions of war, of Yggdrasil, burning urged him forward. He stepped to the pool's edge, Tyrfing and Gungnir humming in unison. The heat was unbearable, but he leaped, the fire swallowing him. He emerged in a realm of flame and shadow, the air alive with screams. Sigrid stood ahead, her silver hair glowing, a shard of bone in her hand, its runes pulsing green. You're persistent, she said, her voice laced with venom. But the pact is mine. Torvald raised Gungnir, its runes flaring. You betrayed Vargfil, he said. Give me the shard. Sigrid laughed, raising her hand. The flames surged, forming shapes warriors of fire, their blades molten. Loki chose me, she said. You're just his blade. The fire warriors attacked, their heat searing Torvald's skin. He fought with Tyrfing and Gungnir, their power cutting through flame. But Sigrid was relentless, her chance summoning more. The shard in her hand glowed brighter, its runes twisting the fire to her will. Torvald's strength waned, his wounds burning, but the raven's cry echoed in his mind. Prove your worth. He lunged, Gungnir piercing Sigrid's arm. She screamed, the shard falling, and Torvald seized it, its runes matching the bones. The fire warriors dissolved, and the realm collapsed, spitting him back into the forge. Sigrid was gone, her laughter echoing in the air. Volin took the shard and bone, his hammer striking with precision. Sparks flew, and the bone reformed, its runes glowing brighter, whole again. You've earned this, he said, handing it back. But the fire grows. Sigrid's master will not rest. Torvald clutched the bone, its weight heavier now. What is she planning? He asked. The raven answered, landing beside him. She seeks the goddess, bound in the underworld. The bone points the way. Follow, or lose all. Torvald nodded, the forge's heat still burning in his lungs. As he left, Volin's hammer resumed, the clang echoing like a warning. The Stormfang waited, its crew silent as Torvald boarded, the bone relic pulsing with new power. The raven took flight, leading them south, toward the underworld's gate, and the fire that waited. Chapter 9. The Oath Beneath the Stars. The Stormfang glided through a sea of stars, the night sky above, mirroring the still waters below. Torvald stood at the helm, the reforged bone relic heavy in his cloak, its runes pulsing faintly with a light that seemed to answer the constellations. Tyrfing's sword hummed at his hip, and Gungnir, strapped across his back, vibrated with a quiet intensity, as if sensing the path ahead. The volcanic wasteland of the forgotten forge was days behind them, but the memory of Volin's fire and Sigrid's taunting laughter lingered like a wound. The raven, perched on the ship's prow, had spoken of a serious waiting in the Wilds, a woman who could read the bones, secrets, and reveal the next step in Torvald's journey, step toward the underworld, where a goddess lay bound. The crew was silent, their faces drawn from weeks of relentless trials. Bjorn, ever watchful, stood beside Torvald, his axe resting on his shoulder. These isles, he muttered, eyeing the dark shapes rising from the horizon. The skalds say they're cursed, that the stars themselves whisper to those who linger. You trust this bird to lead us true. Torvald glanced at the raven, its ember eyes fixed on the approaching land. I trust it to lead, he said, his voice low. Whether it's true, I don't know. But the bone's visions don't lie. We're bound to this. Bjorn's jaw tightened, but he nodded, his loyalty unshaken despite the fear in his eyes. The Stormfang anchored in a cove, ringed by cliffs, their surfaces glittering with flecks of crystal that caught the starlight. Torvald disembarked alone, the raven taking flight to guide him inland. The air was cool, scented with pine and salt, and the ground beneath his boots hummed with a subtle power, as if the isles themselves were alive. The raven led him through a maze of rocky paths, past stones etched with runes that glowed like starlight. The path ended at a clearing, where a circle of standing stones stood beneath an open sky, their surfaces carved with celestial patterns. At the center sat a woman, her hair white as frost, her eyes blindfolded with a strip of black cloth. She held a staff of twisted wood, its tip glowing faintly, and her presence seemed to pull the starlight closer, bathing the clearing in a silvery glow. You are late, son of Eirik, she said, her voice soft but resonant, like a song carried on. The wind, the stars have waited. Torvald stopped, his hand brushing Tyrfing's hilt. You know me, he said, wary. Who are you? I am Astrid, seeress of the Starfall Isles, she replied, rising. The raven speaks for the gods, but I read their will. You carry the bone of prophecy, reforged, but incomplete. Show it to me. Torvald hesitated, the memory of betrayal sharp in his mind. But the raven landed beside Astrid, its eyes unyielding, and he drew the bone from his cloak. Its runes flared, casting shadows that danced across the stones. Astrid's fingers traced the carvings, her blindfolded face unreadable. The bone speaks of war, she said. Gods against gods, men against men, and you at the center. But your path leads below, to Helheim, where a goddess lies bound, the Dune, keeper of the apples of youth, imprisoned by Loki's schemes. Your bloodline's pact ties you to her fate. Torvald's heart pounded. Idun, the goddess whose apples granted the gods their immortality, was a name from childhood tales. Why is she bound, he asked, and why me? Astrid's lips curved into a faint smile. Loki fears her power, for her apples could shift the balance of the coming war. Your ancestors swore to serve him, but your destiny is to free her or destroy her. The stars do not lie, but they do not choose for you. The raven cawed, its wings flaring. Swear the oath, it rasped. Bind yourself to the path, or the fire consumes all. Torvald's grip tightened on the bone. What oath? He demanded, his voice sharp. I'm tired of riddles. Astrid stepped closer, her staff tapping the ground. An oath of blood to face Helheim's gate and seek Idun. The gods watch Torvald refuse, and the pact's fire will burn Vargfell to ash. The weight of her words pressed on him, heavy as the visions of Yggdrasil burning. He thought of his father, his village, the crew waiting at the ship, Sigrid's green flames, the serpents, coils, the shadow beneath the world tree. All led to this moment. He drew his dagger, the blade glinting in the starlight, and sliced his palm, blood welling red and bright. I swear, he said, his voice steady, to seek Idun, to face the underworld, and to defy the fire. He pressed his bloody hand to the nearest standing stone, and the runes flared, the ground trembling. Astrid nodded, her blindfolded gaze seeming to pierce him. The stars accept your oath, she said, but beware, Sigrid knows your path. She serves Loki's will, and she will not let you reach Helheim unopposed. The raven took flight, circling the clearing. The gate lies south, it said. The bone will guide you. Prepare, for the dead do not welcome the living. Astrid handed him a small crystal, its surface etched with a single rune. Hope. Keep this, she said. It will light your way when the dark grows deep. Torvald tucked the crystal into his cloak, beside the bone. The air shimmered, and the standing stones seemed to hum, their runes pulsing in time with his heartbeat. He turned to leave, but Astrid's voice stopped him. One truth, son of Eirik, she said. The goddess's freedom comes at a cost. Your blood may be the price. He nodded, the weight of the oath settling into his bones. The raven led him back to the Stormfang, its cry echoing over the cliffs. The crew waited, their eyes wide as they saw the blood on his hand, the resolve in his face. Bjorn stepped forward, his axe lowered. What did you find? He he asked, his voice tight. A path, Torvald said, climbing aboard. To the underworld. We sail south. The crew murmured, fear rippling through them, but Bjorn's nod silenced their doubts. The Stormfang set sail, the stars above guiding them toward Helheim's gate. Torvald stood at the helm, the bone relic, Tyrfing, Gungnir, and the crystal heavy with purpose. Sigrid was out there, plotting, and Loki's shadow loomed larger. The oath bound him now, a chain forged in blood, pulling him toward a goddess and a war he could not yet comprehend. Chapter 10. Wolves of the Endless Night. The Stormfang lay icebound, its hull locked in the frozen grip of a fjord that had turned to glass overnight. Torvald stood on the deck, his breath clouding in the bitter air, the bone relic heavy in his cloak. Tyrfing's sword pulsed at his hip, and Gungnir slung across his back, hummed faintly, as if restless in the unnatural cold. The Starfall Isles were far behind, their starry runes and Astrid's oath a distant memory. But the warning echoed, Sigrid knows your path. She will not let you reach Helheim unopposed. The Raven, perched on the ship's prow, stared into the blizzard that had descended without warning, its ember eyes cutting through the swirling snow. We can't sail in this, Bjorn said, his scarred face barely visible beneath his fur hood. The ice is too thick, and the men are half frozen. What does your bird say now? Torvald glanced at the Raven, its silence unnerving. It says we walk, he replied, his voice steady despite the chill sinking into his bones. Helheim's gate is south, through the valley. We can't wait out this storm, the crew muttered, their fear palpable. The valley ahead, known as Duskville, was a place of dread in Vargfjell's tales, a haunted cleft where light never lingered, and the dead was said to roam. But the bone relic's runes had flared when the storm hit, pointing south, and the Raven's cry had confirmed it. Torvald shouldered his weapons, the crystal from Astrid glowing faintly in his cloak, and led the crew ashore. The Stormfang left to the ice's mercy. The valley was a frozen wound in the earth, its cliffs looming like silent sentinels. Snow fell in relentless sheets, and the wind carried a low, mournful howl that set the crew's nerves on edge. The Raven flew ahead, its wings a dark blur, guiding them deeper. Torvald's hand rested on Tyrfing's hilt, the sword's hum a quiet reassurance against the growing sense of dread. As night fell, the howling grew louder, not wind, but something alive. The crew halted, their weapons drawn, when shapes emerged. From the blizzard, warriors, clad in furs and iron, their shields bearing the sigil of Hrafnskell, the rival clan. Their leader, a broad man with a braided beard, stepped forward, his axe raised but not swung. Torvald, son of Eirik, he called, his voice rough. You trespass in our lands. Why? Torvald tightened his grip on Tyrfing. Gunnar of he said, recognizing the man from past raids. We seek passage south. The storm traps us all. Let us pass, or we fight in this frozen hell. Gunnar's eyes narrowed, but before he could reply, the Raven cawed sharply, its wings flaring. Fools, it rasped. The wolves come, unite, or die. A chorus of howls split the air, closer now, and the snow churned with movement. Eyes gleamed in the dark yellow, unblinking, set in massive forms that were not natural wolves. Their fur shimmered with runes, their teeth long as daggers, their bodies rippling with a ghostly light. They were drog-wolves, beasts of the underworld, summoned by a power Torvald could feel in the bone relic's pulse. Gunnar cursed, his men forming a shield wall. What sorcery is this, Torvald? He demanded. No sorcery of mine, Torvald said, drawing Tyrfing. Its runes blazed, and Gungnir's hum grew louder. Fight with us, or we all perish. Gunnar hesitated, then nodded, his axe gleaming. For now, we stand together. The wolves attacked, a tide of teeth and claws. Torvald fought at the center, Tyrfing slashing through spectral fur, Gungnir piercing glowing eyes. The beasts were relentless, their wounds closing as they reformed, their howls shaking the valley. Bjorn and Gunnar fought side by side, their axes cleaving through the pack, but the numbers seemed endless. Torvald's crew and Hrafnskell's warriors formed a tight ring, their shields splintering under the onslaught. The Raven circled above, its cries guiding Torvald's strikes. The bone, it shrieked, use its light. Torvald drew the bone relic, its runes flaring white-hot. He raised it, and a pulse of light erupted, staggering the wolves. Their forms flickered, revealing a figure in the distance, Sigrid, her silver hair glowing, her hands weaving green flames that fed the beast's power. "You cannot stop the fire, Torvald," she called, her voice carrying over the storm. "Loki's will is greater." Torvald's blood boiled. He thrust Gungnir, its head flying true, but Sigrid vanished in a burst of flame, the wolves surging anew. The bone relic burned in his hand, its runes guiding him. He drove it into the ground, and a shockwave of light exploded, shattering the wolves into fragments of shadow. The valley fell silent, the snow stained with blood and ashdot. Gunnar panted, his axe dripping. "What are you, Torvald?" he asked, his voice low. "No man wields such power." Torvald sheathed Tyrfing, the bone relic still warm. "I'm what the gods made me," he said. "But Sigrid serves Loki, and she's hunting me. We need to move." Gunnar's eyes hardened, but he nodded. "Our clans have bled enough. I'll take you to the valley's end, but no further. This war of yours is no business of Hafenskul." The raven landed on Torvald's shoulder, its talons sharp. "He speaks truth," it said, "but the fire binds you all. The gate to Helheim lies beyond." Torvald led the combined group through the valley, the truce uneasy but holding. The storm eased, revealing a stone archway carved with runes that matched the bones. The crystal from Astrid glowed brighter, its light cutting through the dark. Torvald felt the weight of his oath, the bones, visions, and the weapon's power. Sigrid was close, her green flames a warning of Loki's growing reach. As they reached the archway, Gunnar stopped, his men behind him. "This is where we part," he said, "but know this, Torvald, if you bring this war to Hafenskul, our truce ends." Torvald nodded, gripping the bone. "Keep your people safe, Gunnar. The fire comes for us all." The raven took flight, leading Torvald and his crew toward the archway, the gate to Helheim, waiting beyond. The wolves' howls lingered in his mind, and Sigrid's laughter echoed, a promise of battles yet to come. Chapter 11. The horn of Heimdall's called the wind carried the scent of frost and decay as Torvald led his crew through the frozen pass beyond Duskville's archway. The bone relic pulsed in his cloak, its runes glowing faintly, urging him to Helheim's gate. Tyrfing's sword hummed at his hip, and Gungnir slung across his back vibrated with a restless energy, as if sensing the divine threshold ahead. The raven flew low, its ember eyes piercing the twilight, its wings cutting through the mist that clung to the jagged cliffs. The truce with Gunnar's Hafenskul warriors had held only until the valley's end, and now Torvald's small band Bjorn and 5 others faced the path alone, their faces drawn from the battle with the Draugr wolves and the weight of Sigrid's lingering threat. The raven had spoken of a sacred horn, Heimdall's call, hidden in a shrine beyond the pass. Its power could summon divine aid, a beacon to pierce the underworld's shadows. But the bird's warning echoed in Torvald's mind. The horn's guardian would demand a sacrifice, one that would test his loyalty. The bones, war, of Yggdrasil burning, of Idun's imprisonment, pressed heavier with each step, and Astrid's crystal glowed faintly, its rune of hope, a fragile light against the growing dark. The pass opened into a plateau, where a shrine of white stone stood, its pillars carved with runes that glowed like moonlight. At its center hung a horn, its surface etched with spirals and stars, its mouthpiece glinting with a silver that seemed alive. The air thrummed with power, and the raven landed on a pillar, its voice sharp. "The horn of Heimdall," it rasped, "blow it, and the gods will answer." But its guardian waits. Torvald approached, his hand brushing Tyrfing's hilt. "What guardian?" he asked, his voice steady despite the unease coiling in his gut. "And what sacrifice?" The raven's eyes gleamed. "The watcher of the Bifrost, Heimdall's echo, guards the horn. It demands a price, something you hold dear. Choose wisely, or the horn stays silent." Before Torvald could reply, the air shimmered, and a figure materialized before the shrine. It was tall, clad in armor of gleaming white, its eyes burning with a light that pierced the soul. Its face was featureless, a mask of divine will, and in its hand was a sword that glowed like the dawn. "Torvald, son of Eirik," it said, its voice resonating like a bell. "You seek the horn to call the gods, but power demands sacrifice. What will you give?" Torvald's crew stirred, Bjorn's hand tightening on his axe. "This is madness," Bjorn muttered. "We've bled enough for your path, Torvald." Torvald ignored him, stepping forward. "Name the price," he said, his hand resting on the bone relic. Tyrfing and Gungnir hummed, as if wary of the Guardian's presence. The figure's eyes flared. "Loyalty," it said. "Give me one who stands with you, a life bound to yours. Their blood will wake the horn." Torvald's heart sank. He glanced at his crew. Bjorn, loyal despite his doubts. Sven, the young archer who'd fought bravely against the wolves. The others, men who'd followed him through fire and ice. "You ask me to betray my own," he said, his voice tight. "I won't." The Guardian's sword lowered, its tip grazing the stone. "Then the horn stays silent, and Helheim's gate will break you. Choose, or all is lost." The raven cawed, circling the shrine. "The gods test you," it said. "The fire waits for no man." Torvald's mind raced, the bones visions flashing. Loki's smile, Sigrid's flames, Idon's chains. He thought of Vagfjul, his father, the oath he'd sworn beneath the stars. Sacrificing one of his men was unthinkable, but the horn's power could mean the difference between saving Idun and falling to Loki's fire. He turned to Bjorn, his oldest friend, whose scarred face was set with grim resolve. "Torvald," Bjorn said, stepping forward, his voice low. "If it's a life they want, take mine. I've fought enough battles. Let the others live." "No," Torvald snapped, his hand gripping Bjorn's shoulder. "I won't lose you." Sven stepped forward, his young face pale but firm. "Then me," he said. "I'm no warrior like Bjorn. If my blood saves Vagfjul, take it." The crew's murmurs grew, fear and loyalty warring in their eyes. Torvald's chest tightened, the Guardian's gaze unyielding. The raven landed on the horn, its talons clicking. "Choose," it hissed, "or the fire chooses for you." Torvald drew the bone relic, its runes flaring. Astrid's crystal glowed brighter, its light cutting through his doubt. He couldn't sacrifice his men, but the gods demanded a price. Then it hit him, a sacrifice of loyalty, not life. He turned to the Guardian, his voice steady. "Take my loyalty to the gods," he said. "I serve my people, not Loki or Odin. If the horn demands a bond, I break theirs." The Guardian's eyes narrowed, the air trembling. "Bold," it said. "But the gods do not release their chosen lightly. Prove your words." The ground shook, and shadows rose from the shrines. Base wraiths, their forms twisting like smoke, their eyes glowing with divine wrath. They wielded blades of light, their movements swift and merciless. Torvald drew Tyrfing, its runes blazing, and unslung Gungnir. "Stand back," he shouted to his crew, charging the wraiths. The battle was fierce, the wraiths' blades clashing against Tyrfing's edge, their strikes testing his skill and will. Gungnir flew true, piercing their forms, but they reformed, their laughter like breaking ice. Torvald fought with a ferocity born of defiance, his oath to his people burning brighter than the gods' claim. The bone relic pulsed, its light guiding his strikes, and Astrid's crystal flared, weakening the wraiths with each blow. As the last wraith fell, the Guardian raised its hand, the shrine glowing. "You defy the gods, yet wield their power," it said. "The horn is yours, but your choice echoes. The fire will test it." Torvald approached the horn, his hands trembling as he lifted it. Its weight was light, but its power thrummed, resonating. With Tyrfing and Gungnir, he blew, and a sound like 1,000 storms shook the plateau, the sky splitting with light. The raven cawed, its wings flaring, and the air shimmered with a presence Torvald couldn't name. "The gods here," the raven said. "Helheim's gate awaits. Sigrid draws near, and her fire burns hotter." Torvald slung the horn across his chest, its runes glowing faintly. The crew gathered, their faces a mix of awe and fear. Bjorn clapped his shoulder, his voice gruff. "You spared us," he said. "But defying the gods, that's a heavy price." "It's mine to pay," Torvald replied, the bone relic warm against his chest. The raven took flight, leading them south, toward the underworld's gate. Shadow loomed, and the horn's call echoed in his mind, a promise of a damned, a warning of the fire to come. Chapter 12. Ashes of the fallen gods. The wind howled across the desolate plain, carrying ash that stung Torvald's eyes and coated his tongue with the taste of ruin. The Stormfang was far behind, moored in a frozen fjord, its crew huddled against the cold as Torvald pressed south toward Helheim's gate. Tyrfing's sword pulsed at his hip, Gungnir's spear hummed across his back, and the horn of Heimdall hung heavy against his chest, its runes faintly glowing. The bone relic, tucked in his cloak beside Astrid's crystal, burned with a restless energy, its runes guiding him to this forsaken place, a battlefield where the raven claimed gods had fallen long ago. The raven flew ahead, its black wings stark against the grey sky, its ember eyes scanning the scorched earth. The plain was littered with shattered weapons and bones, some human, some impossibly large, their surfaces etched with runes that flickered like dying embers. The air thrummed with a lingering power, and the ground seemed to pulse, as if the earth itself mourned. Bjorn and the crew followed at a distance, their faces pale, their hands never far from their weapons. The Drogwolves and Sigrid's sorcery had left them wary, and this place, heavy with divine death, only deepened their fear. Here, the raven rasped, landing on a cracked stone slab, its surface carved with a spiral of runes. The ashes of gods lie beneath. Their blood stains your path, son of Eirik. Torvald stopped, his boots crunching on ash and bone. What happened here? He asked, his voice low, the weight of the bone relic pressing against his chest. And why bring me to this graveyard? The raven tilted its head, its eyes glinting with a strange intensity. This is where Tyrfing fell, where the Bladebreaker's war ended. His blood binds you, and I am his shadow. Touch the stone, and know the truth. Torvald's heart thudded. The raven's words carried a weight he hadn't heard before, a hint of something personal, almost vulnerable. He knelt, his hand brushing the slab, its runes flaring under his touch. The world dissolved, and a vision swallowed him. He saw a battlefield under a sky of fire, gods clashing with blades of light and shadow. Tyrfing, the god of war, stood at the center, his armor blackened, his sword Torvald's, sword blazing with runes. He fought against Odin and Loki, their faces twisted with rage and betrayal. A raven circled above, its cries echoing Tyrfing's roars. The god fell, his blood soaking the earth, and the raven landed beside him, its feathers merging with his fading form. A voice, Loki's, laughed, sealing a pact as the raven's eyes burned with divine light. The vision shifted, showing Torvald's ancestor kneeling before Loki, swearing the pact that bound their bloodline. The raven watched, its form unchanging, its eyes fixed on the warrior. Then Torvald saw himself, standing in the tomb, claiming Tyrfing's sword, the raven's voice guiding him. The truth hit like a blow. The raven was no mere messenger. It was Tyrfing's essence, bound to his soul. Immortal and tethered to the pact. Torvald staggered back, gasping, the slab's runes dimming. The raven watched, its silence heavy. "You're him," Torvald said, his voice hoarse. "Tyrfing, the god whose sword I carry." The raven's wings flared. "I am his shadow," it said, "a fragment, bound to you by blood and fate. I live to see the pact fulfilled, to stop the fire or to burn with it." Torvald's mind reeled. The bone relic pulsed, its visions of war and Yggdrasil's flames aligning with the raven's. "Truth, why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, his hand gripping Tyrfing's hilt. "All this time, you've led me like a thrall." The raven's laugh was a sharp caw. "You are not ready. The god's war is yours now, Torvald. The bone points to Helheim, to Idun, but the fire grows. Sigrid seeks her too, and she knows my truth." Before Torvald could reply, a tremor shook the plain. The bones rattled, and a low growl rose from the earth. Shadows coalesced, forming massive wolves, not Drogor, but something older, their fur woven with ash, their eyes burning with divine wrath. They were the guardians of the fallen gods, woken by Torvald's touch. "Fight!" the raven shrieked, taking flight, or join the ashes. Torvald drew Tyrfing, its runes blazing, and unslung Gungnir. Bjorn and the crew formed a loose ring, their axes and spears ready, but fear etched their faces. The wolves lunged, their claws tearing through stone, their roars shaking the air. Torvald fought with a ferocity born of revelation. Tyrfing's blade cutting through ash and bone, Gungnir piercing glowing eyes. The horn at his chest hummed, tempting him to blow it, but the raven's cry stopped him. "Not yet. The gods' aid comes later." The battle was brutal, the wolves relentless, their forms reforming from the ash with each strike. Torvald's crew faltered, one man falling to a wolf's jaws, his scream cut short. Bjorn fought fiercely, his axe splintering bone, but the numbers overwhelmed them. Torvald raised the bone relic, its runes flaring, and thrust it into the ground. A pulse of light erupted, staggering the wolves, and he blew the horn of Heimdall, its sound shattering the air. The wolves froze, their forms dissolving into ash, and a light split the sky, fleeting but powerful. The plain fell silent, the bones still once more. Torvald panted, blood dripping from a gash on his arm, the horn heavy against his chest. The crew gathered, their faces pale, mourning their fallen. "You called the gods," Bjorn said, his voice tight. "What now?" Torvald looked to the raven perched on the slab, its eyes unyielding. "Helheim," he said. "The gate is close. Idun waits, and Sigrid hunts us." The raven cawed, its wings flaring. "The goddess is key," it said. "But my truth binds us closer, Torvald. Your soul and mine are one, forged in Tyrfing's fall. Fail, and we both burn." Torvald nodded, the weight of the raven's revelation settling into his bones. He led the crew south, the battlefield's ashes clinging to their boots. The bone relic glowed, its runes pointing to a dark chasm ahead Helheim's gate. Sigrid's shadow loomed, and the fire of Ragnarök drew nearer, its heat a promise of trials yet to come. Chapter 13. The Veil of Hell's Gate. The chasm yawned before Torvald like the maw of a great beast, its depths shrouded in a mist that pulsed with faint sickly light. The bone relic burned against his chest, its runes glowing with an urgency that matched the hum of Tyrfing's sword at his hip and Gungnir's spear across his back. The horn of Heimdall hung heavy, its runes silent but ready. The raven perched on a jagged rock at the chasm's edge, its ember eyes fixed on the darkness below Helheim's gate, the threshold to the realm of the dead. The air was thick with the scent of frost and decay, and the wind carried whispers, not of the living, but of those long gone. Torvald's crew stood behind him, their faces pale after the battle on the god-fallen plain. Bjorn, his scarred face grim, gripped his axe, his eyes darting to the chasm. The loss of one of their own to the ash wolves still weighed on them, but Torvald's heart carried a heavier burden. The bone relic's latest vision, shown in the night's fleeting rest, had revealed his sister, Astridnot the Cirrus, but his younger sibling from Vagfell trapped in Helheim, her life stolen by Sigrid's green flames. The raven had confirmed it. To save her, Torvald must cross the veil, but the price would be steep. "You cannot take them," the raven rasped, its wings flaring. "The dead do not welcome the living, and Hell's gaze is merciless. Go alone, son of Eirik, or lose all." Torvald turned to Bjorn, his voice low. "Stay here. Guard the path. If I don't return by dawn, sail back to Vagfjord." Bjorn's jaw tightened. "You're walking into death, Torvald. For Astrid, she's my sister." Torvald cut in, his hand on Tyrfing's hilt. "I swore an oath to protect our people. That includes her." Bjorn nodded, his eyes heavy with doubt, and the crew stepped back, their prayers to Odin barely a whisper against the chasm's pull. Torvald faced the gate, the raven taking flight, its cry echoing as it dove. Into the mist he followed, descending a narrow path carved into the chasm's wall, the air growing colder, heavier, with each step. The bone relic flared, and Astrid's crystal glowed, its rune of hope, a faint light in the dark. The path ended at a vast cavern, its floor a frozen river, its surface reflecting a sky of endless grey. A gate of black stone loomed, its surface carved with skulls and runes that pulsed with a sickly green. Beyond it, shadows moved, shapes of the dead, their eyes hollow, their voices a low moan. The raven landed on the gate, its talons clicking. "Blow the horn," it said. "Heimdall's call will open the way, but hell waits within." Torvald raised the horn of Heimdall, its weight steady in his hands. He blew, and a sound like 1,000 storms shook the cavern, the gate cracking open with a groan. The mist parted, revealing a bridge of bone spanning a void, leading to a throne of ice and shadow. There sat Hel, queen of the underworld, her face half beauty, half decay, her eyes burning with cold fire. Astrid knelt before her, bound in chains of green flame, her face pale but defiant. "Torvald, son of Eirik," Hel said, her voice a hiss. That chilled his blood. "You dare enter my realm, wielding the tools of gods. Why?" Torvald stepped onto the bridge, Tyrfing drawn Gungnir. "Ready, for my sister," he said. "Release her." Hel's laugh was like breaking glass. "Her life was taken by Loki's pawn, Sigrid. She belongs to me now. But I am not without mercy. Offer me a bargain, mortal, and I may listen." The raven landed on Torvald's shoulder, its voice a whisper. "Careful," it said. "Hell's bargains bind the soul." Torvald's mind raced. the bone relics visions flashing Idun's chains, Yggdrasil burning, Loki's smile. Astrid's eyes met his, pleading but strong. He couldn't lose her, not after all he'd faced. "Name your price," he said, his voice steady. Hel leaned forward, her decayed half grinning. "A life for a life. Give me another, bound to you, or surrender your own soul to stay in her place." Torvald's heart sank. He thought of Bjorn, waiting above, of his crew, of Vargfjall, the raven's truth that it was Tyrfing's shadow, bound to his soul echoed in his mind. Could he offer himself, knowing the fire still loomed? He raised the bone relic, its runes flaring. "Take me," he said, "but let Astrid go, and give me the path to Idun." Hel's eyes narrowed, the air trembling. "Bold," she said, "but the goddess is not mine to give. She lies deeper in Loki's chains. I accept your soul, but you must face my trial first." The bridge shook, and shadows rose from the void warriors of the dead, their armor cracked, their blades glowing with Hel's green fire. Astrid's chains tightened, her cry piercing Torvald's heart. He fought Tyrfing slashing through shadow, Gungnir piercing spectral hearts. The bone relic pulsed, guiding his strikes, and Astrid's crystal flared, weakening the dead. The raven circled, its cries urging him on, but Hel watched, her gaze unyielding. As the last warrior fell, Torvald stood panting, blood dripping from a wound on his chest. Hel rose, her throne dissolving into mist. "You fight well," she said. "Your soul is mine, but I grant you passage to Idun and to Astrid's freedom. But know this, Loki's pawn waits, and the fire follows." She waved a hand, and Astrid's chains dissolved. She ran to Torvald, her arms wrapping round him. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I had to," Torvald said, holding her close. The raven cawed, landing beside them. "The path deepens," it said. "Idun's prison lies beyond. Hurry, or Sigrid claims her." Torvald led Astrid back across the bridge, the gate closing behind them. The cavern's mist parted, revealing a deeper path, its walls pulsing with runes. Hel's bargain weighed on him, his soul, a price he might yet pay. The bone relic glowed, guiding them toward a dune, and the raven's eyes burned with a shared resolve. Sigrid was close, and the fire of Ragnarok loomed ever nearer. Chapter 14. The storm of Ragnarok's dawn. The frozen air bit at Torvald's skin as he emerged from Helheim's gate. Astrid at his side, her hand gripping his arm for strength. The chasm's mist clung to them, its chill a reminder of Hel's. Bargain his soul promised for Astrid's freedom and the path to Idun. Tyrfing's sword pulsed at his hip. Gungnir's spear hummed across his back, and the horn of Heimdall rested heavy against his chest. The bone relic, tucked beside Astrid's crystal, burned with runes that pointed deeper into the underworld, toward Idun's prison. The raven perched on a nearby rock, its ember eyes dimmer than usual, its feathers ruffled as if shaken by an unseen storm. Bjorn and the crew waited above, their faces etched with relief at Astrid's return, but shadowed by fear. The sky above the chasm churned, clouds swirling with streaks of fire and green light omens of Ragnarok. The bone's visions come to life. Torvald's heart pounded. The weight of Hel's words and the raven's truth that it was Tyrfing's shadow, bound to his soul, pressing heavier. Sigrid was close, her green flames a beacon of Loki's growing power, and the raven's guidance felt less certain, its cries faltering. "We can't stay here," Torvald said, his voice steady, despite the unease coiling in his gut. "The bone points deeper, to Idun, but something's coming, a storm, an army. We need to move." Bjorn's scarred face darkened. "You brought back your sister, but at what cost, Torvald? This place reeks of death, and that bird." He glared at the raven, his axe twitching in his hand. "It's led us to ruin." The raven cawed weakly, its wings trembling. "The fire rises," it rasped. "Loki's champion gathers an army. Rally your people, son of Eirik, or Helheim claims you all." Torvald's jaw tightened. He led the crew away from the chasm, toward a rocky plain where the Stormfang waited. Still ice. The sky grew darker, the green light intensifying, and the ground trembled faintly, as if the earth itself sensed the coming war. As they reached the ship, a horn sounded in the distance, not Heimdall's, but a mortal call, sharp and urgent. Figures emerged on the horizon, warriors, their armor glinting, their banners bearing the skull and bone sigil of Hrafnskull, but twisted with green flames. Sigrid. Torvald muttered, drawing Tyrfing, Its runes blazed and Gungnir's hum grew louder. The raven's eyes flickered, its voice faint. Not Sigrid, it said. Her champion Fenrir's kin, chosen by Loki. A massive figure led the army, towering over the Hrafnskell warriors. Clad in black iron, his face hidden by a wolf-shaped helm, he wielded a blade that burned with green fire. His presence radiated power, and the air around him shimmered, as if reality bent to his will. Torvald recognized the sigil on his armor, a wolf's head, entwined with serpents. Fenrir, the great wolf of Ragnarok, bound by the gods but stirring in the myths. Torvald, Astrid cried, her voice shaking. That's no man, it's a god's avatar. Torvald rallied his crew, their numbers small against the approaching army. Form a line, he shouted, raising gear. We hold them here. Bjorn took position beside him, his axe ready, while Astrid clutched a dagger, her eyes fierce despite her fear. The crew formed a shield wall, their faces grim but resolute. The raven landed on Torvald's shoulder, its voice a whisper. Blow the horn, it said. Heimdall's call may tip the scales. Torvald hesitated, the raven's faltering presence unsettling him. But the army advanced, the champion's blade flaring, and he had no choice. He raised the horn of Heimdall and blew, its sound shaking the plain. The sky split with light, and a wind roared, carrying the scent of divine power. The army faltered, but the champion laughed, his voice like grinding stone. You call the gods, boy, he bellowed. Loki's will is stronger. The battle erupted, Hrafnskell warriors clashing with Torvald's crew. Tyrfing sang in his hand, cutting through armor and bone, while Gungnir flew true, piercing hearts with unerring aim. The champion charged, his blade meeting Tyrfing in a shower of sparks, green flames clashing with divine runes. Torvald fought with a ferocity born of desperation, the bone relic pulsing, Astrid's crystal flaring to weaken the champion's fire. But the raven's cries grew weaker, its wings trembling as it circled. I fade, it whispered, audible only to Torvald. My strength is yours, but the pact binds us too tightly. Use the bone, or we fall. Torvald drove Gungnir into the ground, the bone relic raised high. Its runes blazed and a pulse of light erupted, staggering the army. The champion roared, his helm cracking to reveal eyes like Fenrir's yellow, burning with malice. You cannot stop he snarled, his blade grazing Torvald's side, blood soaking his cloak. Astrid screamed, lunging with her dagger, but the champion swatted her aside. Torvald caught her, his rage igniting. He thrust Tyrfing, its runes flaring, and struck the champion's chest. The bone relic pulsed again, and Gungnir returned to his hand, piercing the champion's helm. The figure staggered, green flames dimming, and collapsed, his army breaking in chaos. The plain fell silent, the Hrafnskell warriors fleeing into the storm. Torvald knelt beside Astrid, her breathing shallow but steady. Bjorn and the surviving crew gathered, their faces bloodied but resolute. The raven landed beside Torvald, its form flickering, almost translucent. You've won this battle, it said, its voice faint. But the fire grows. Idon's prison is near, and Sigrid waits. Torvald clutched the bone relic, its runes dimming. You're fading, he said, his voice tight. What happens to you? The raven's eyes met his, a shared soul reflected. I am you, Torvald. If you fall, I fall. Find a dune, or we burn together. He nodded, helping Astrid to her feet. The crew rallied, their resolve hardened by the victory. But Torvald felt the raven's weakness, a crack in his own strength. The storm churned above, green flames flickering in the clouds, and the path to Idun's prison lay ahead, guarded by Sigrid and Loki's final gambit. The fire of Ragnarok was dawning, and Torvald was its blade or its kindling. Chapter 15. The Last Flight of the Raven. The underworld's chill clung to Torvald like a second skin as he descended into the heart of Helheim. The bone relic burning against his chest, its runes pulsing with a light that cut through the endless dark. Tyrfing's sword hummed at his hip, Gungnir's spear weighed heavy across his back, and the horn of Heimdall thrummed against his heart. Astrid walked beside him, her dagger clutched tightly, her eyes fierce despite the wounds from the battle against Fenrir's champion. The raven, its form flickering like a dying flame, flew ahead, its ember eyes dim but resolute, guiding them toward Idun's prison. The air was thick with ash and whispers, the ground trembling with the pulse of Ragnarok's dawn. The raven's weakening state gnawed at Torvald. It had revealed itself as Tyrfing's shadow, a fragment of the fallen god bound to his soul, and its faltering presence felt like a crack in his own resolve. Sigrid's green flames haunted his visions, her allegiance to Loki driving the fire that threatened to consume the world. The bone relic's final vision had shown Idun, the goddess of youth, chained in a cavern of ice and fire. Her apple-ski to the god's immortality within Sigrid's reach, Torvald's oath to Astrid the seeress, his bargain with Hel, and the raven's truth had led him here, to a final stand where destiny and defiance collided. The path opened into a vast cavern, its walls glistening with ice, its floor scorched with green flames. At its center stood a throne of blackened stone, where Idun sat, her wrists bound by chains that pulsed with Loki's runes. Her golden hair shimmered, but her eyes were hollow, her divine light dimmed. Before her stood Sigrid, her silver hair glowing, a stolen apple in her hand, its surface radiating power. An army of shadowed warriors, Loki's thralls, flanked her, their blades burning with green fire. "You're too late, Torvald," Sigrid called, her voice sharp with triumph. "The apple is mine, and Loki's fire will reshape the world." Torvald drew Tyrfing, its runes blazing, and unslung Gungnir. "Release her," he said, his voice steady. "This ends now." Sigrid laughed, raising the apple. "You're a pawn, bound by a pact you can't break. The raven is dying, and your soul with it. Kneel, and Loki might spare Vagfile." The raven landed on Torvald's shoulder, its form nearly translucent, its voice a faint whisper. "She lies," it rasped. "I am Tyrfing, and you are my heir. Break the pact, or we burn together." Torvald's heart pounded, the bone relic flaring, Astrid's crystal glowing with hope. He glanced at his sister, her nod urging him forward. "No more pawns," he said, stepping towards it. "I choose my path." The battle erupted, Loki's thralls charging with blades of fire. Torvald fought with a ferocity born of defiance, Tyrfing slashing through shadow, Gungnir piercing hearts with unerring aim. Astrid darted through the fray, her dagger striking with precision, her courage a mirror of Torvald's own. The raven circled, its cries weak but guiding, its light fading with each blow Torvald landed. Sigrid chanted, her green flames surging, summoning a serpent of fire that coiled around Idun's throne. Torvald blew the horn of Heimdall, its sound shaking the cavern, and a divine light split the air, staggering the thralls. He thrust the bone relic into the ground, its runes erupting in a pulse of white light that shattered the serpent's form. Sigrid screamed, her apple glowing brighter, but Torvald charged, Gungnir flying to pin her cloak to the throne. "You can't stop Ragnarok," Sigrid snarled, her flames flaring. "The pact binds you." Torvald raised Tyrfing, its blade humming. "With the raven's essence, the pact ends here," he said, and struck the apple from her hand. It shattered, its light fading, and Idun's chains cracked, her divine glow returning. Sigrid lunged, a dagger of green fire in her hand, but Astrid tackled her, pinning her to the ground. The raven landed beside Torvald, its form collapsing into light. "You've freed her," it whispered, its voice now fully Tyrfing's, "but the fire remains. Choose." Torvald fulfilled the pact, and serve Loki, or defy the gods, and forge your own fate. Torvald looked to Idun, now standing, her eyes grateful but heavy with knowledge. "The fire is Ragnarok's spark," she said. "Loki seeks to control it, but your bloodline's pact gives you a choice. Break it, and the gods may turn against you." Torvald's mind raced his village, his sister, the battles he'd fought. The raven's light flickered, its form merging with his own, a warmth spreading through his soul. He saw the truth. The pact had bound his blood, but his will was his own. He raised Tyrfing and Gungnir, their runes blazing, and drove them into the throne, shattering Loki's chains. "I defy you all," he said, his voice echoing. "Odin, Loki, Hel, I am no pawn. Vagfjell will stand, and the fire will not take us." The cavern shook, Sigrid's screams fading as her flames died. Idun vanished in a burst of golden light, her apples safe from Loki's grasp. The raven's form dissolved, its voice a final whisper in Torvald's mind. "You are free, my heir. Live or burn." The cavern collapsed, and Torvald grabbed Astrid, sprinting for the gate. They emerged into the frozen plain, the chasm sealing behind them. The crew waited, Bjorn's face breaking into relief as they saw Astrid safe. The sky above was clear, the green flames gone, but the air still carried the weight of Shadow Torvald, sheathed Tyrfing, Gungnir, and the horn silent now. The bone relic's runes had dimmed, its purpose fulfilled. Astrid's crystal glowed faintly, a reminder of hope. What now? Astrid asked, her voice soft but strong. We return to Vargfjall, Torvald said, his eyes on the horizon. The gods will come again, but we'll face them as free men. The Stormfang broke free of the ice, its crew weary but resolute. Torvald stood at the helm, the raven gone, its essence a part of him now. He had defied the gods, broken the pact, and saved Idun, but the fire of Ragnarok still smoldered, a distant threat. For now, he sailed home, a Viking unbound, his path his own.